And okay, here we go. Come on. Good girl. You stay right here. All right, let me just mute. Okay, are we ready? Okay, great. So welcome. Good morning. I'm like feeling extra energetic today. I mean, I have pretty good energy usually, but it always can vary day to day, but today feels really good. So let's start. So let's start with some lower abdominal breathing. Good girl. Okay, so one hand on the lower abdomen and the other hand on top. And feel all four corners of each foot pressing into the ground. So think about moving in two different directions. So we're pressing down through the soles of the feet, thinking about roots extending down to the earth as that anchor. And then also simultaneously, almost like you have like a slinky, if you're a child of the 80s, uh, the little metal spring toy that never really worked great. But if you think of a slinky, right? If we're starting at the base and then inhaling and just very gently, like your spine is that slinky that we're increasing the space between each vertebrae and then stretching the crown of the head towards the sky above. So just creating those micro spaces between each vertebrae. Like we can grow a little bit taller. And as we do, we melt the shoulders down. And while feeling that simultaneous pressing down through the earth and extending up through the sky above, we get to have a little bit more freedom in the diaphragm area. So we're really able to take a nice deep breath in on the inhale and nice slow exhale. So we work from the center out in QiGong. So we start with the breath. We start with organizing our center, opening up areas of constriction, letting go of the gunk, sort of prepping the interior environment. And then we go into the flows. And that's still a lot of inward action and energy work, but it's also now the relationship to the world around us. So it's that interconnection and exchanging of energy. But we have to first sort of feel where we are now and reorganize our centers so that we're able to do that and garner the gold from those flows in the latter half of the. Let's open our eyes and let's go right into knocking on the door of life. And even you probably already have felt this. Even day to day, you might feel differently. Even knocking on the door of life, which we do almost every session, right? It might feel a little different each time that you come into this movement. And then come up below the collarbone. I was uh come all the way to the top of the shoulders. Uh Listening to Lee Holden, a Qigong instructor, talk about being at the airport and having a really like obnoxiously delayed flight, like 6 hours, and then come back down below the collarbone, and how or the premise, right, of having expectations and how that could be really annoying, right? Especially if you have things you have to get home for and you don't want to be stuck in the airport, come back down to the waist. But the premise of having expectations, and then what can happen when we have expectations and life doesn't unfold as we expect, and what can happen internally to our energies, and how we can practice let go and go into water waves, practice sort of letting go of those expectations and the tension and tightness that can often arise when we have expectations and they're not met, or we have expectations in life has a different plan, right? And being able to sort of like navigate and kind of soften the edges around those twists and turns that life gives us so that we kind of stay present, right? And kind of focused on what we can control, and recognizing what is beyond our control, and having a different relationship to that. And he was doing, I think, some qigong right in the airport, and a couple hours later, people were coming up asking what he was doing. I think that's kind of a brilliant time to do qigong, and then come to stillness is sort of when we can have two choices, right? We can go into contraction and irritation and frustration. Not that that's bad, but is it going to make you feel good or better, or kind of like acknowledging that frustration and then kind of using these tools to kind of pull us out of that and back into feeling easeful and in the flow. So let's from here, let's go into spinal cord breathing. So we inhale and look up on the inhale, and then exhale, tucking the tailbone, the chin comes gently towards the chest, and then inhale. It's kind of fun too. When I was at the hospital, my father was in the hospital a couple of weeks ago for some surgeries, a surgery, and we were there for hours at a time. And I just got up and I started doing qigong at one point, and you get curious looks from people, but it's kind of fun because it piques their interest and is often a conversation opener. Willie agrees. And right, it's an opportunity also just to sort of like take where we are at a specific moment in time and kind of roll with it, work with it. And so using these exercises and movements to make us feel a little bit more present and at least in control of something. And what is that? It's how we're feeling, our reactions. The funny thing is, I'm not even sure what Willie's looking for. Just opening up the spine on the inhale, and then we're letting everything spill forward, opening up the back of the spine on the exhale. Nurses and doctors are probably two of the people that could use qigong the most in the hospital. And on the exhale, let everything go. Come here. Okay, so from here, let's go into a wider stance. And let's just start first with doing a little bit of spinal rotation. So we're going to keep your hands on the thighs and we're going to take a nice inhale. And as we exhale, you're going to turn to the left and drop your right shoulder down so that you're gently turning and looking over the left shoulder. And then just stay on this side for a few rounds of breath, just thinking about lengthening the spine on the inhale and then exhaling, maybe going a little bit deeper into the twist. So this should feel pretty good in the lower back, even up into the mid back. And then inhale, come to the center. And then exhale, letting your left shoulder drop down, turning and looking over the right. And now come back to the center on the inhale, and then we'll move on the breath. So exhaling, dropping the right shoulder down. And then nice deep inhale as we come back to the center, and then exhaling, letting the left shoulder drop down. So you can also go at your own pace. You don't necessarily need to follow my exact movements in sync. Whatever feels best for you, except that I am going to encourage that you go slow. You really allow a nice full inhalation and a full exhalation. Twisting is one of the best things that we can do for the health of our spine, but also for a gentle massage of the internal organs. It's great for digestion. And this is a very gentle stretch too, gentle twist. Now come to the center. Keep the knees nice and bent, and then just bring your hands to the floor. So your fingers are right below your head. And then let the crown of your head spill towards the earth. And we'll just hang out here for a moment, just getting a little of the decompression of the spine. If you keep your head and shoulders nice and relaxed, right, you're allowing a little bit of that traction to occur that helps to decompress the cervical spine, even down into the thoracic and lumbar spine. So the upper portion of the spine, the mid spine, and lower spine. And then let's gently walk our hands over to the left ankle or left foot so that we're getting a little bit more of a stretch into the left hamstring. You can even massage your hamstring with one hand, maybe rubbing in circles, starting from the top of the back of the leg and the hamstring, working down towards the back of the knee, and then down through the calf towards the ankle. And then come to the center, and then gently walking our way over to the right ankle. And again, massaging from the hamstring down to the back of the knee and the calf.
starting to warm up. That's the bladder channel. The bladder channel runs down the entire length of the back of the body. And then come to the center. And then keep your knees nice and bent. Grab one wrist with your opposite hand and very slowly start to roll all the way up. Just think about stacking the base of your vertebrae on top of one another, rolling all the way up. And then the head comes up last. And then inhale your arms way above, a nice stretch. And then exhale the arms out to the side and then down. Okay, let's bring our feet back to a narrower position. And let's do a little bit of stretching for the head, neck, and shoulders. So hands behind in a prayer position, fingers facing down, or you can grab opposite elbows, whatever feels good. And then we'll start with head rolls. So let's let the head drop over to the left shoulder. And then we'll just let the head come forward nice and slowly to the opposite shoulder. And then up. So working our way in one direction. Exhaling as your head rolls forward, and then inhale. Think of like you're using your inhale just to lift your head up. And then we let it drop over to the opposite side as we exhale. And then we'll pause and go in the opposite direction. And then on the next inhale, let's bring our head upright. So keep your arms behind your back. We are going to go into a similar head and neck and shoulder stretch, but we're going to make very small circles. So let's start with letting the head tilt over to your left. And then just imagine that you're making circles with your chin. So imagine that there's a canvas in front of you and you have a little pencil or crayon attached to it, and you're trying to make circles just using your chin. So they're going to be a lot smaller. So we're going to keep our head tilting over to the left, and we're just going to start making little circles from the chin. This just helps to open a little bit of it's a more subtle stretch. It's getting into the smaller muscles of the neck and the shoulder. Just think of these small circles like you're unraveling, like a spool of tightly bound muscle. And then go in, just pause. So our head's still tilted over to the left. Now we're just going to go in the opposite direction. So if you're going clockwise before, you'll be going counterclockwise now. And then let's pause. We're going to let our heads come all the way forward for just a moment. So our chin is tucked down towards our chest. And then very gently now over to the right shoulder. And then we start those really small circles again. and then pause, and then go in the opposite direction. Just letting all of that tightly bound, knotty musculature to soften, loosen up, and think of ice melting to water, and water then gets to flow. So all that energy is just getting loosey goosey, and then the meridians open up and things flow a lot more easily. And then let's pause. Let's bring the head back to center so the chin is down towards the chest for a moment before bringing the head upright. And then slowly bring the head up, let the arms drop down, and let's just shake everything out now. And let's start to slow down. Okay, so we are going to be going into a few flows that have to do with piercing the veil, which we've done before. But first, let's connect to the lungs and the lung channel, since that's where we first pull in energy through our bringing oxygen in and letting it flow through us. So we're going to start with lower embrace the tree, which is this posture. The fingers are pointing towards one another. And then just reminding ourselves that in flow, we're moving with relaxation. So letting the shoulders first melt away from the ears. There's a little loosey, flowy goodness flowing through the arms into the fingertips. And then on the inhale, just think of floating your arms, your hands up above the head, looking up towards the sky, and then exhaling back down. And then inhale, just connecting with the breath, connecting with above, and then connecting with below. Going nice and slow. This is the meditative portion of class, moving meditation. So our intention and attention is interlocked, and we're allowing our minds and our emotional center and our heart, physical center, be in alignment. If the mind wanders, just gently come back to your breath, focusing again on this movement, maybe closing your eyes and just being a witness, right? The witness kind of watching yourself, kind of flowing through these movements.
They say, as we go into the next flow in a moment, the piercing the veil, right? The acknowledgement that most of us, right, kind of focus more on the physical world around us, the material stuff. And I don't mean, Madonna's Material Girl. I mean just the substance, the furniture that's in the room, right? The people, the the objects. And so the veil that is everything, right? What we can see with our eyes and maybe feel to the touch, that very solid physical world. But they say, I mean, the physics and all the scientists, that 99% of what's around us is actually invisible. Like, we pay attention to the objects, but even if you have your eyes open, right, you kind of just like take more notice of how much space there is, the space between the objects. And in that space is a field, right? It's an energetic field, is electromagnetism. I mean, gravity itself is one of the most predominant invisible forces that we know of. And this flow state that we get into allows us to tap into that invisible aspect of life that's infinitely greater than the physical. So piercing the veil is piercing through that illusion that most of what's around us are objects and things. And we can kind of pierce through that and tap into that invisible. So let's pause here with the arms at right angles, the hands facing up for a moment, just allowing your hands to feel a little heavy. And then for piercing the veil, we'll start with your right hand. So if the palms are starting facing up, you're going to reach your right arm forward. And as you do, you're going to spiral the hand in and then out. So it's just a little spiral as we reach forward. And then as we draw in, you're going to spiral it back in the opposite direction. So we draw back in towards the lower abdomen. And now the left hand. So we just reach out and spiral in and then unspiral basically as we pull back in towards the waist. So exhale as we reach forward, spiraling that arm and hand, and then spiraling it back in. So nice and slow, we slowly reach forward. Imagine that you're just piercing with your fingertips, piercing through this veil. And what we're tapping into and pulling back in is a golden light. You're allowing your fingertips, right, to touch this golden elixir, and then you're just gently spiraling in and drawing that in so that we're focusing it and targeting that light into the lower abdomen, the lower dantian. We're inhaling as we draw our hands back in, and then exhale, spiraling and reaching forward. And spirals, that's life. Life emerges and evolves, nature in spirals, whether it's trees, think of even shells, right? Shells that the crustaceans, right, often have shells that have that sort of spiral quality. And our DNA at a very microscopic level, right? The helix is a spiral. So we're harnessing that, right? Spiral, like a corkscrew, right? And spiraling it back in. And that golden elixir that we're drawing in is helping to amplify, nourish, and reminding us of our interconnectedness to the space around us. And as we reach forward, just make sure your hands are loose. So if there's any kind of gripping, you want to just create a little bit of ease, releasing tension. We're just flowing our arms out, piercing that veil, and then pulling in that beautiful golden elixir. So we're going to pause as we bring our arms back, palms up. We're going to continue, but we're going to make a slight variation, and that's we're going to be slightly rotating to right and left. So let's start with your right. So we're going to turn slightly to the left, and as we do, you're just going to bring your arm across the body. Same thing, you're going to spiral and then spiral it back into the center. So it's the same movement of the arms. We're just making a little bit of a rotation. So now that we're drawing in from the right and left. So we're just slightly turning, spiraling from the shoulder all the way down. And then inhale back in. So if you turn, think about reaching forward from the back of the shoulder blade, the whole arm spirals, and then it spirals back into the center. So exhale as we spiral, reaching, and then inhale as we come back to the center, keeping the knees a little bit bent. Right? Because energy doesn't exist just in front of us, it's all around us. So we start at the center, but now we're moving into energy that exists from side to side. And we nice and slowly just think of slowly like we're moving through this viscous honey nectar. And we're just slowly pulling in. If you've ever been able to be present or have seen maybe online when someone that keeps bees, when they go in and they take that little sliver, right, of honey, you have to pull out these slots where the bees make their honey and honeycomb, and then put them into, well, you have to first sort of chisel off, I think, from my recollection, some of the comb, or maybe it's the propolis, and then you put the slot into a centrifuge, and that helps to pull the honey off of the comb, and then it collects at the bottom, and that's when you fill the jars. So just think of the process of kind of like extracting that honey and drawing in. It is not quick. It is very slow, right? Just think of going slow to harness that elixir and that ooey goodness you're just allowing to pull into your center, that ooey gooiness that is nourishing and healing. And now come to the center. There's one last variation of this. So we'll start again, the hands face up for one moment. And we are going to do a double time. So both hands are going to be moving at the same time. And all we're going to do is raise the arms up above the head and then spiral the arms in and then out. And then the same thing, like we're grasping and pulling these threads of nectar into the center. And again, we're going to slowly inhale, spiraling the arms in and then out, and then drawing them in back in as we spiral the hands back in. Connecting to that space above and drawing in. Spiraling the hands in, out, and then spiraling back in. Through the palms, that nectar seeps through the upper arms into the center of the body. Feeling that invisible force. And let's do that one more time. And then let's spiral back in. Let's pause one more time with the palms facing up, feeling the space right above your palms. And then the last flow, now that we've brought in all this goodness, we still want to make sure we are protecting what we just brought in. So let's drop the arms down. And we've done this before. This is where we inhale and crisscross the arms at the inner and outer gates. The point that's about 3 finger breaths above the inside of your forearm and on the outside. These 2 different points that have to do with our immune system and our immune system in relationships and our interactions. And then you're going to slowly float the arms apart and then exhale the hands back down. You can even sink a little bit as the knees bend. And then we inhale again, crisscrossing the arms as we pull apart, and then exhale down. So it's a very long inhale. So you're going to inhale and then exhale. And you can change which arm is on top. can alternate. So we're inhaling, just keeping our focus on the integration, right, of our boundary systems so that we can maintain our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health, right? Keeping boundaries that help protect those three. Right? So we protect, we're protected, then we're able to open our hearts to others and be there authentically while knowing that we are grounded within ourselves. We have our boundary systems intact so that we're able to do everything that we want to do and not feel depleted or take things on that are not ours, which will enable us to be able to continue to be there for others in a very powerful way because we have such strong internal resources. So, in that respect, this is a very selfless thing, right? Is paying attention to your internal resources and keeping yourself nourished is one of the best gifts that we can give to others. And then one more inhale. And then exhale down. Let's go into our chi ball before we go into pulling down the skies for the end of class. Let's bring the feet together and then inhale the arms down, around, and up. And then exhale, the hands float down. And then inhale and exhale. And one last inhale and exhale. Let's end with bamboo in the wind, keeping our hands connected to the lower abdomen for a few more moments, storing all of that goodness right into that lower bank account. So that we are strong, and as life unfolds, we unfold and navigate the waters feeling strong and flexible. And when you're ready, you can crack your eyes open. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Sorry, Lily was a little bit more distracting than normal, so I apologize, but I think she just wants to go out and play ball because it's so nice out. So thank you again. I hope you have a beautiful day and a beautiful weekend. And I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.